Now at my end, I can fully see. My last case opened in me a new fear, a real fear, of myself, what I am, and what I've always been. All that I was is now lost. Hope, purpose, pleasure, all meaningless. I now walk in the shadows between worlds, and it's there that I've finally glimpsed upon what lives in the dark corners of the earth. It's with that line, spoken by a man at the ends of his sanity, that Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth begins. Released by Headfirst Productions in 2005 for the PC and Xbox, Call of Cthulhu has you take the place of a 1920s police detective named Jack Walters, who gets a call late one night to privately look into a case. A man named Brian Burnham has supposedly disappeared in a nearby town named Innsmouth. He was last known to be working at the town's grocery store, but local authorities have played off this disappearance by accusing him of robbing said store and fleeing with the money. This concerned caller, however, doesn't trust these reports and wants you to go check it out. What you find when you get there is that Innsmouth is no ordinary town. It's nearly deserted for one, and the locals don't seem all too pleased that you've come to visit what few of them are left. Your journey, beginning here, will span you around 11 hours and take you everywhere from decrepit old towns to underground tombs and forgotten lands beneath the tides. What Cthulhu really excels at is creating a creepy and unique atmosphere. Taking some inspiration from classic H.P. Lovecraft stories like Shadow over Innsmouth, this game utilizes everything that makes this style of horror great. You won't find too many jump scares here, but the overall feeling of not just the environments, but the story and characters is like nothing I've ever seen. Creeping down each alleyway and monster-filled sewer tunnel felt tense the whole way through, and the developers even found additional ways to increase the atmosphere, like making your character's sanity a game mechanic. If you see too many horrific sights, your character will slowly become more and more insane as the plot continues. This affects you in multiple ways over the course of the game, the first of which being vision and movement, which are impaired as you're affected more and more. Intense moments like creeping along the edge of a narrow cliffside, your character may start to panic as well as get lightheaded, and if you aren't careful, this could cause you to topple over the edge to your doom. Another thematic way this affects you is that you begin audibly doubting yourself as the game goes on. Jack starts to question why he's here and if what he's seeing is even real, and these maddened whispers of his only serve to enhance the creepy atmosphere even more. Going insane is going to be hard to avoid, however, as a creepy little town is going to be the least of your worries by the end of this runtime. All sorts of eldritch and alien horrors lie in every dark corner, and by the end of the game, you'll truly be left with a disturbing and unique experience. Next, we can talk about the combat, which is a pretty big part of the game as well. Around a third of the way through, you'll actually get access to a few weapons to help defend yourself from the horrors. These start off as just a double-barrel shotgun and a semi-auto pistol, but slowly evolve into a more robust selection. By the end of the game, you'll have around 8 weapons being melee in range to pick from. The combat is generally thought of in a negative light by many online, but I actually didn't mind it. It feels very much like Fallout 3 in some ways, which isn't too surprising due to the fact that it runs in the same game engine, and because Bethesda themselves published the game. Headshots deal more damage and insta-kill in some situations, and the overall animations of the weapons and smoke they exhale are really satisfying. The Tommy gun you get to use was also a highlight, as the drum magazine let you light up whole rooms in spectacular fashion. This isn't to say that the combat was perfect though. The developers tried to create unique mechanics to make Cthulhu feel more realistic, but some of them ended up being meh in the end. One of these would be the injury mechanic. As you take damage, you slowly pick up injuries to specific parts of your body that'll affect everything from your aiming, sight, and movement speed. Medkits can be collected to give you different medical supplies like gauze and sutures. These can be used to heal individual injuries in yourself, which is a cool idea and concept, but it's ruined, however, because you can also just press H and heal your entire body at once, removing the point of the individual injuries and items as a whole. Another annoying aspect of this is that if you take much damage at all, you can actually bleed out in a matter of like a minute or two. Due to this, I really wouldn't recommend playing this game on a harder difficulty because it would simply make your experience in some moments frustrating, due to bleeding out from a single hit or something similar. On another note, the AI can also be a bit iffy at times, and in moments like this, can really be taken advantage of.
Did you hear that? Hold it! Stop! Take him down!
The AI obviously aren't that bad for most of the game, however if you deviate from the paths and set pieces the developers intended you to go on, then the horror illusion can fall apart sometimes. A recurring issue I had was that some sections required you to perform such elaborately precise movements and actions that weren't explained to you, and if you didn't follow them exactly, then you would die. This led to a lot of retries on some sections, like in one of the boss fights in particular. I believe playing on a lower difficulty will alleviate some of these issues though. Next we can get onto the technical side of things, and this game for sure has some issues. Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth is available on GOG, Steam, and the original Xbox, but I highly recommend you stay away from the Steam version though, as it has the most issues by far. On the GOG version, the only issue I really had was that a sequence at the end of the game when you have to escape a collapsing area was unfinishable due to the game not giving you enough time to escape. I solved this by using a patch I'll leave in the description. Basically, when you reach this section, you can use the patch to increase your movement speed in order to get through unharmed. Outside of that, the game functioned great and ran at a smooth 60 FPS 1440p for me the whole way through. Enough of the negatives though, let's get back onto a great aspect of the game, that being the stealth. For large sections of Cthulhu, you'll be unarmed and forced to navigate areas without drawing the attention of guards and monsters. Areas where this was the case were highlights of my playthrough, as they really ramped up the horror feel and made you genuinely tense up. Creeping from shadow to shadow, as well as tailing, hulking enemies was always exciting, and the times when you're found could also be very cinematic. Little features like bolt locks and doors you can use, and bookshelves you can push in front of doors made moments that felt much more real and immersive to play. Seeing an enemy cut through the door Shining style while you fumble with the lock on your escape route truly instills fear in you. At other times, you could be caught off guard while thinking you're in the clear, but having the floor under you collapse, causing all the nearby foes to come rushing to you. Really, I can't say enough about the stealth and atmosphere this game has. As someone who's not usually into horror games, I can see that the atmosphere and cinematic stealth sections are worth the price of admission alone here. Next, we can get onto another bright point, in the puzzles. Seeing as you play detective in Cthulhu, much of your time will be spent solving the puzzles and riddles akin to old point-and-click games. I can truly say some of these are legitimately hard and confusing puzzles, especially in the end. Most of the time, these will require you to look at your inventory to read through notes and inspect items in order to figure out how to progress through obstacles. You can also inspect most worldly objects, and Jack will comment on them or say whether it's of any importance. This also applies to locked doors which you can inspect. Jack will usually say whether a door is locked, bolted, or simply rusted shut and unopenable. The differences in these may not seem important, but will determine how you're meant to think about getting past the door itself. Some of the boss fights actually ended up being puzzles in a way too, requiring you to study them and their surroundings to learn how to beat them. I will say that a few of these sections did feel a bit too obscure, especially like I said near the end, but for the most part, I found that my trouble was that I simply didn't check back to the notes or inspect an area thoroughly enough in many cases. Finally, we'll get onto the music, and luckily it's all positive here. Much of the soundtrack on offer tends to lean towards the ambient side and simply serves to enhance the atmosphere, but at certain points, like in the track behind my intro, it really picks up and turns the scene that would have been mundane into a thrilling moment. I'm a sucker for alien sort of sci-fi music, and this one definitely scratches that itch. Well, what more is there to say? Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth is a really unique and atmosphere-rich horror game that I think all of you should try. Despite its problems, it manages to be one of the most interesting horror titles I've tried since getting into the genre about a year ago with the original Dead Space. If you're a fan of detective mysteries, Lovecraft stories, and just horror in general, I think you'll like what's on offer here. For all these reasons and more, I'm giving this game a 7.5 out of 10.